YouTube, hello. I'm iltisine. This is Techtonica. The developers state this is a first-person factory automation game set beneath the surface of an alien planet. As in most automation or factory games, they have conveyor belts, and this is 10 of the mechanics of the conveyor belts in Techtonica. Let's get right into it. I'd like to start the video out by saying the game is currently in early access on Steam. Anything I say in this video, while I believe it to be true today, it could also change with future updates down the road. The first mechanic of belts that we're going to get into is just how to place the belt on the ground. Once you get them on your toolbar, you will click in the first location that you want the belt to start on, and then you will drag to where you want the belt to end, and you can click again. There is another option with this, is once you click at the first location and you drag to another spot, if you tap the R key, which you can see down below is for rotate, you can actually turn the belt and place it in a different direction. You can hit R to change the direction of the belt when you are placing it in the beginning. This is optional as well. You can either go left or right. It depends on which way you look from that beginning location. You can do that with multiple bins as well. And the splitter is not supposed to appear, but that's something for a future mechanic. On to the second mechanic of the belts that we have in Techtonica. There are two versions of the belt in the game now, and a future update they have already talked about adding a third version of the belt in, which would be even faster than these. You can see on the bottom left side of the screen, the conveyor belt has a max speed of 240 items per minute. That is the rate that it will transfer over a specific piece. They are also orange when you look at the arrow in the middle of them, and they do point in the direction that they are headed. The Mark II conveyor belt does have a green arrow and is a lot faster, literally double speed, at 480 items per minute. Before we get into our third mechanic, I would like to point out that the game is available on Xbox, and I believe Xbox Game Pass as well. So any of the commands or controls in the game that I give will be using keyboard and mouse because I am playing on PC through Steam. And I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out early in the video to make everyone aware. If you look directly over here, there are commands for anything that you can do. They should show the button for the Xbox controller, I would imagine, in place of what they have for the keyboard and mouse commands here. And then on to our third mechanic. Looking at those, you do see that rotate option come up again when you're looking at a belt that is already placed on the ground. What that lets you do is actually rotate a belt that is placed on the ground in place, which is pretty useful. If you have a belt that you ended up placing in the wrong direction or something like that, you can go to each individual section of the belt and reverse the entire operation. For our fourth mechanic, we are going to go on to a splitter of a belt. If you have one input and you need to divide that between two different systems, you can do that with an automatic splitter. These populate automatically in the game. The way that you get this to work is you take a straight section of belt, you point a belt away from it, and you place that new belt, and that will split as well. For the fifth mechanic, we are also going to look at mergers. These operate very much the same way. You could have one input to a belt, and if you need to add more product to that line, you can put another belt pushing into it. It will merge those two lines coming out of the belt at the end. To make one of these mergers, you just drag a belt pushing into the belt that you're trying to merge with, and it will operate automatically. Something I should mention with tips mechanics 4 and 5 is you do need some space between. It will not allow you to put splitters or mergers right next to each other. So you do have to plan slightly where you want those to go as you are doing your factory. Alright, on to our sixth mechanic for the belt in Techtonica. If there is something in the way of a belt that you are trying to put down on the ground, it will automatically raise to go over that, and then it will go back down the other side if you're coming back to the ground as well. To combine this with a previous tip, if you are going over something and you want to turn the belt, that is also something that you can do. It will go over taller objects as well, as long as you make sure there is enough room in front of and behind that object. That is something it can do. If you are too close, it will not go over it because it does not have enough space to get to the same height. You can create belts that are just straight up and down like that, although you will need a section of belt in front of it to load something onto it. As far as the 7th mechanic, then, we're going to be looking at the reverse. Belts actually going down and then back up. For this, you will need at least 3 spaces. The belt in the middle, being a flat section, is actually required here. You can maneuver belts to go directly down and then directly back up, but that's not how they will typically land. If there are only 2 gaps here, it will go directly across that area instead. While you are on a lower platform, as long as you have that flat piece of belt, you can create mergers with it, and if you reverse that, you can create splitters as well. You cannot create a merger or a splitter off of a piece of belt that is going up or down, though. Those are specifically going up and down. With the rotate option, you can reverse the direction of the angled belts to go back up if you were coming down before, and vice versa. That is done with the same key that's used to rotate the belt originally. And then, just to combine the 7th mechanic a little bit with another tip from earlier, where you have the belt going over something, you can create a merger in the air. I use belts on the platform as something for these to go over, and then this will work to create a merger. You could also create a splitter much in the same way, although you actually don't need a second belt on the platform to do this. For this one specifically, once you put one belt down and you are going over it, you can turn the belt looking at the side of this piece, and that will create a splitter in the air just like that. On to the 8th mechanic, the belts in Techtonica. They will actually climb stairs and platforms if they have something in their way the entire way up. This is similar to a previous tip, but more about getting something from one level of your factory to another right now. They will do the same with machines as long as there is enough space in front of them as well. And then you could use this to get to a higher platform if you wanted to. You can see here, if there is a gap, the belt wants to go down and fall again, but if you continue forward, the belt will just stay on that level. Onto the 9th mechanic that I have listed here, the belt will fall to whatever height they have to fall to get to something solid from up above as well, if you want to bring something down to a lower section. For the 10th mechanic, that actually works in reverse as well. What I mean by that is not the belt coming down this direction, but the belt facing the wrong direction. If you are trying to bring something from a lower platform onto a higher platform, you do not have something in the way for the belt to run into, it will actually just continue on that lower platform and not come up. So for the 10th mechanic, what you can actually do is have the belt going up with its arrows when you first click. You could actually rotate this as well with the R key on keyboard, but then you can drag the belt down. Well, and there you go. If we go back to where it was in the beginning, you have to make sure the arrows are pointing the same way. They're pointing that up direction. And actually, why is it doing that? It's weird. If you start with it like this, it will work. Okay, that's something I actually didn't know. It will work this direction like that and still go up. It looks like if you start it here and you are facing up, but you rotate it, even if you rotate it back to where it is facing up again, but then you start to drag out, it will change direction. I learned something making the video. That is, not what I expected. To continue this, though, once you are making bends in the belt or something like that, this is something else I wanted to point out, not exactly counting this as a mechanic. If you do have bends in the belt and you are turning at specific locations, you can actually hit, it would be the Q button for hide toolbar on PC, and it will go back to a previous turn so that you have a little bit more control. If you are turning a belt and you bring it over water, it will actually sit on top of the water's surface, and then that will be counted as the lowest point that it's able to land on. That is just as good as landing on a platform, typically. I've seen belts go into water once, but we won't talk about that here. We have a couple of bonus mechanics that I'm going to get into. One of the last two mechanics is going to be talking about the splitters and the mergers again. You can actually make a merger with two belts that are right next to each other. You rotate one of those belts into the other one, and it will form a merger right away. The splitter does not exactly work in the same way because you do need a gap of one space. When you turn a belt coming off of this one, it will be able to turn that direction with that gap in between, but you do have to have that there for the splitting side. The other mechanic that you can do with this, I guess I'm including another one now, is you can actually have two inputs go into the same spot and then two outputs come out of that. It can be useful occasionally to balance between different sections of the same material and things like that. And then the last thing that I wanted to show for the video is if you have a raised belt in the air and you have nothing on the ground in front of it, you walk into that belt and it will stop you in your tracks. You will not be able to proceed, do not pass go. If you have a belt on the ground though, that tiny bit of height that it gives you when you walk onto the belt will be enough to actually completely walk over that next belt that is in the area. That is just about everything I can think of that I know about the belts in Techtonica. Let me know down in the comments below if you learned something today that you didn't know beforehand. Also, let me know if there's any other aspects of Techtonica that you would like to see in a future video. Like the video if you thought it was helpful. And then if you do want to see live gameplay, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.com/iltisine. Thank you. They are being developed. The game is blah 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 blah. Is you can have two belts that are right next to each other. Did it again. Motherfucking god damn it. We're gonna start with our first tip, or mechanic, which is stumbling on my words. So I just leave that in.